Single dad said, "I have to leave early for a date." The jealous CEO followed him and discovered the truth. Nobody in that office knew anything real about Daniel. They knew he was good at his job. Really good. He never missed a deadline. He never complained. He never came late. He kept his desk clean, his emails short, and his personal life completely to himself. If anyone ever tried to start a conversation about the weekend, Daniel would smile, give a short answer, and somehow steer the whole thing back to work without anyone noticing. He was polite. He was professional. He was, in every way, the perfect employee. But he was also a mystery. And in a small office where people talked about everything, Daniel's silence stood out like a locked door in the middle of an open room. His CEO, Nadia, had noticed this from the very beginning. She had hired him herself, 3 years ago, after one of the sharpest interviews she had ever conducted. He was smart, clear-headed, and confident. But even during the interview, she had felt like she was only seeing the surface of something much deeper. She had hired him anyway. She was good at recognizing talent, even when it came wrapped in walls. Over the next 3 years, she watched him do excellent work. She gave him raises. She moved him into a senior role. And through all of it, she told herself that the strange pull she felt whenever he walked into a room was nothing more than professional respect. She was a CEO. She did not let personal feelings enter the picture. She had rules about that. Then came that Thursday afternoon. It was a quarterly review meeting, the kind that always runs long, with slides nobody really needs, and conversations that go in circles. Everyone was still in the room. The meeting had already gone 30 minutes over. Nadia was mid-sentence when Daniel quietly pushed his chair back, picked up his jacket, and stood up. "Sorry," he said. "I have to leave early today." Someone asked why. And Daniel, calm, private, always professional Daniel, smiled this small, warm smile that nobody in that room had ever seen before, and said, "I have a date." Then he walked out. The room went completely quiet for about 3 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Daniel? A date? Nobody had even known he was seeing someone. Nobody had known anything about his life at all. Nadia said nothing. She just looked at the door he had walked through and felt something land in her chest. Something sharp and uncomfortable that she could not immediately name. She continued the meeting. She finished the slides. She answered questions, but some part of her mind stayed stuck on that word, date. By the time she got back to her office, she had talked herself into a neat, tidy explanation. She was simply surprised. It was unexpected. That was all. She was not, absolutely not, jealous. She was a grown woman who ran a company. She did not get jealous over an employee. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and stared at the screen without reading a single word for 11 minutes. Then she picked up her bag, her coat, and her keys. And before she could talk herself out of it, she walked out of the building and got into her car. She told herself she just needed some fresh air. She told herself that for about 40 seconds. Then she spotted Daniel half a block ahead, walking quickly toward the car park. And she did something she will probably never fully explain to herself. She followed him. She kept her distance. She stayed back. She watched him get into a dark blue car and pull out, and she followed, slowly, carefully, with the window down and a growing sense that she was doing something she should absolutely not be doing. She pushed the feeling aside. She kept driving. He drove for about 30 minutes. Away from the office towers and the glass buildings, away from the city center and the busy roads, into a part of town she had never been to. It was quieter there. The streets were narrower. There were trees everywhere, big ones, the kind that have been there for decades. The houses had small front gardens and old wooden gates. Kids had left chalk drawings on the pavement. Someone had put a potted sunflower outside their front door. It felt, honestly, like a different world from the one she lived in. Daniel parked in front of a small house with a red front door. Nadia stopped her car further down the road. She sat there, engine off, feeling like the world's most overpaid fool. What was she doing? Seriously, what was she doing? She was about to start the car and drive home. She really was. When the red door opened, a little girl came running out. She was maybe 5 or 6 years old, wearing a yellow dress and one sock that was clearly inside out. She ran down the 2 front steps and launched herself off the last one, with absolutely no hesitation, like she had been calculating the exact moment her father would appear, and had planned the jump accordingly. Daniel caught her with both arms. spun her around once, and held her tight against his chest. Nadia could not hear what they were saying from where she sat, but she could see his face. And his face. This man she had worked with for 3 years. This man who always looked so composed and careful, and slightly unreachable, looked completely different. He looked free. He was laughing. He was pressing his nose into her hair. His whole body was relaxed in a way she had never once seen at work. An older woman appeared in the doorway, the neighbor who had been watching the girl, probably. She said something to Daniel. He said something back. They both laughed. The little girl grabbed his hand and started pulling him toward the park at the end of the road, already talking at full speed about something, her free arm waving around to make her point. They walked away together, the two of them, father and daughter, hand in hand, until they turned the corner and disappeared. Nadia sat in her parked car and did not move for a long time. His date was his daughter. Every single time he had left early, and she realized now that he did this every Thursday, like clockwork. He had been coming here, to this small house with the red door, to this little girl who had jumped off a step knowing, with complete certainty, that her father would catch her. And all this time, Nadia had known nothing. She had worked alongside this man for 3 years, and had not known the most important thing about him. She had assumed he was cold, or private, or simply uninterested in letting anyone close. She had never once thought to wonder whether there was a reason, a real, human reason, for all those walls. She drove home that evening feeling something she had not felt in a long time. Not jealousy. That had vanished the moment she saw his daughter's face. Something else. Something quieter and harder to shake. A kind of wondering. About what it meant to build your whole life around someone. About what it cost to do that quietly, without asking anyone to notice. She did not sleep well. She lay awake thinking about that chalk on the pavement outside his house, and that little girl's inside-out sock, and the way Daniel had looked when there was no one from work watching him. The next morning, she came to the office an hour before everyone else. She opened her laptop and drafted something she had been putting off for over a year. A flexible hours policy for parents and caregivers. She had always meant to do it. There had always been something more urgent. That morning, it felt like the most urgent thing she had ever written. She printed it, put it in a plain envelope, and placed it on Daniel's desk before anyone arrived. No name on it, no signature, just the policy. She was at her desk, pretending to work, when he came in. She watched him from the corner of her eye. He saw the envelope, sat down, and opened it slowly. He read it. Then he sat very still for a moment, the kind of still that means something has landed. He looked up. Across the whole open floor, through the glass wall of her office, he looked directly at her. She looked back. Neither of them said anything, but they both knew. An hour later, he knocked on her door. "Thank you," he said. Just that. But the way he said it was different from how he usually spoke. There was no professional distance in it. It was just honest. She told him to sit down. And then, because something had clearly shifted between them the night before, without either of them doing it on purpose, she told him the truth. That she had followed him. That she was embarrassed about it. That she had seen his daughter catch the light and run, and that it had made her understand something she had been missing. He didn't seem angry. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Her name is Zara. She's 6. She insists on wearing her Halloween costume to everything. Last week she wore it to her swimming lesson." He paused. The teacher was very patient. Nadia laughed. A real laugh. The kind that surprises you before you can stop it. After that, things changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in the small, quiet ways that real things change, slowly, and without any announcement. Daniel started leaving a coffee on her desk some mornings. She started asking about Zara, genuinely asking, remembering the details, following up the next week. He began to talk a little more, not about everything at once, but in pieces, the way trust actually works. He told her he was a widower, that Zara's mother had passed away when Zara was just 3. That the first year after that had been the hardest thing he had ever survived, and the only way he had made it through was by making one promise to himself. Every Thursday at 5:30, without fail, he would be at that door. Not because he had to, because she deserved to know that someone would always show up for her, no matter what. Nadia listened to all of this, and did not say much in return. But something in her shifted quietly, like a window being opened in a room that had been closed for too long. A few weeks later, there was a school event, a little dance show the kids put on. Daniel mentioned it in passing, the way he mentioned most things about his life, briefly, with a kind of careful lightness, as if he was not sure how much space it was okay to take up. He wasn't inviting her. He was just talking. She went anyway. She sat in the back of a school hall on a plastic chair that was clearly designed for someone much smaller, surrounded by parents with phones out and toddlers climbing on the seats, and watched a group of 6-year-olds perform a dance routine that had clearly been rehearsed for about 2 days. Most of them were looking at each other for cues. A few were still learning which was their left and which was their right. Zara was the one in the Halloween costume. She danced with the kind of complete and absolute confidence that small children have before the world tells them to be self-conscious. She was not doing the right moves. She did not care. She had her own moves, and she was fully committed to every single one of them. Halfway through the routine, she spotted Daniel in the front row. Her face changed completely. She waved both arms over her head, broke away from the group for a second, and yelled, "Baba," across the entire hall before the teacher gently steered her back. The whole audience laughed. Daniel covered his face with one hand, but Nadia could see him smiling through his fingers. His phone was recording everything. His other hand was gripping the chair like he was afraid he might float off if he let go. Nadia, sitting 4 rows back, felt something press against the inside of her chest. She had been inside boardrooms and courtrooms and high-stakes negotiations. She had sat across the table from people who wanted to take her company apart piece by piece and had not blinked once. But something about this small, ordinary room, this kid in a costume, this man trying not to cry over a school dance, got to her in a way she could not explain and did not try to. After the show, in the car park, Zara found her father and climbed him like a tree. Then she looked at Nadia, direct, curious, completely unafraid the way only young children are, and said, "Did you see me? I did the extra spin. It's not in the dance. I made it up." "I saw it," Nadia said. "It was the best part." Zara nodded seriously, as if this confirmed what she had already suspected. Then she looked between her father and Nadia, then back at Nadia, and said, "My Baba gets sad waffles when I'm at Grandma's. Do you want to come? You can have the happy ones." Daniel made a sound, like someone who has been betrayed by someone they love deeply and completely. Nadia looked at him. He looked at her. His expression said, "Please understand that I did not plan this. I cannot control her, and I am so sorry." Her expression said, "I would very much like the happy waffles." "Okay," she said out loud. "Yes." They went to a small waffle place nearby that Daniel clearly knew well. The woman at the counter greeted Zara by name and already knew her order. They sat at a table by the window. Zara talked almost the entire time, about the dance, about her friends, about a caterpillar she had found at school and named Terry. Nadia listened and asked questions, and laughed more in that 1 hour than she had in the past month. At some point, while Zara was busy drawing on a napkin with a pen she had found in Daniel's jacket pocket, Daniel looked across the table at Nadia and said quietly, "She likes you. She doesn't know me yet," Nadia said. "She knows enough," he said. "She's a pretty good judge of people. Better than most adults, honestly." Nadia looked at Zara, who was now holding up the napkin to show them a drawing that appeared to be a horse, or possibly a table, or possibly Terry the caterpillar in a hat. "It's you," Zara said, pointing at Nadia. "I gave you wings because you look like someone who would have wings." Nadia took the napkin. She folded it carefully and put it in her coat pocket. It sounds like a small moment, and it was. But the small moments are the ones that stay with you. The big speeches and grand gestures, those you can prepare for, guard against, keep at arm's length if you need to. The small moments catch you off guard. They slip past all your defenses before you even know they're there. That night, driving home alone, Nadia thought about everything she had spent the last decade protecting herself from. The hurt, the disappointment, the feeling of needing someone, and having that go wrong. She had been very careful. She had built a very good life, with very strong walls. And she was just beginning to understand that a strong wall and a safe life are not always the same thing. A month later, Daniel came to find her in her office near the end of the day. He stood in the doorway in that careful way he had, like he was leaving space to retreat if needed. "Zara's birthday is in 3 weeks, he said. "She's made a list. It has 22 items on it. I've said yes to 3 of them. One of the 3 is that she wants you there. Nadia raised her eyebrows. What are the other 2? A bouncy castle, he said. And a dog. You're getting a dog? I have not decided about the dog, he said carefully. Nadia smiled. She thought about a little girl who danced with her own made-up moves, who named caterpillars, who gave strangers wings in napkin drawings, who had grown up being caught every time she jumped. I'll be there, she said, and she was. For the first time in longer than she could clearly remember, she made a promise, and meant it completely, without conditions, without an exit plan, without keeping one hand on the door. She had spent 3 years working next to a man she thought she understood. She had thought he was closed off. She had thought he was unreachable. She had looked at those walls of his, and assumed there was nothing worth knowing on the other side. What was on the other side was a red front door, and a little girl in a yellow dress, with one inside-out sock, and a father who had quietly built his whole world around the promise that someone would always be there. And Nadia, who had spent years being afraid that caring about someone meant losing yourself, was beginning, slowly, carefully, one honest moment at a time, to learn something different. That some doors are worth knocking on, that some people are worth the risk, and that sometimes the most important thing you will ever find out about someone is the thing they never thought to mention, because it was never about being impressive, it was just about love.